Honourable Tim Guraister.
Mr Speaker, the events that have unfurled with respect to potentially contaminated infant formula over the last, 72 hours now, pose some very, very significant challenges for New Zealand, pose significant challenges for the government, both at the political level and official level, pose very significant challenges for Fonterra, raise some very serious issues, of course, for the other smaller dairy companies, and we must never overlook the fact that some of these so-called smaller companies are small only in relation to Fonterra. They're quite significant companies by normal New Zealand company standards for our scientists and for members of our community. And I think we've realised that so many questions are being raised for which there are not adequate answers. But we've tried to follow a very, what I call, segmented and I think logical approach to handling these issues. And by doing so, I do want to emphasise that this does not mean that we don't understand the public clamour and the public legitimate need for answers to these. I wouldn't use the term second-tier questions because they're probably fundamentally important questions, but issues that we can come to later when we have the luxury of time of dealing with the immediate issue which you simply cannot put aside. And we all know what that is, and I know that every member of this House would share this view. It's about the safety of not just our infants. I think it's a very important thing to communicate beyond, because people are listening to what we're saying very carefully. We are just as concerned about the infants of other countries who depend on the safety of the food we send them. And I know that I'm speaking on behalf of every single member of the House when I say that. It's a very important point because there will be misleading media reports that will play on this, and I think it's very important that this House puts that firmly on the record. So that has to be, frankly, the only real concern. Of course, in terms of my own responsibilities, I've got other major economic concerns in the back of my head. But I don't think it's separate. I think the way in which we handle what I call the immediate issue at hand, which is to find out where potentially contaminated powders may, remove them from the marketplace in all the countries concerned, deal with any health consequences that may arise if, thank God, nothing has happened so far, but if should that happen, that's the first order issue, and it will determine some longer-term responses. Our ability to deal with the first-order issue will be a matter of substance. And I've been saying on several occasions over the last few hours, this is not something that's going to be handled by slick PR, photo ops and such matters. This is something that's going to be handled by real substance and professionalism. And I think it's very important that we have that firmly in mind. Now, with respect to the overseas responses, I have not received any information today. I've heard one story that I'm told is now incorrect about Sri Lanka imposing measures, which I'm told I need to obviously see this chapter and verse, is not correct. There is still the potential for additional import restrictions, new testing measures, and so on and so forth, because the other regulatory authorities have got the same moral, legal, political responsibility to protect their people in a situation of uncertainty. And we have to accept that we are not yet fully in a position, I think we're moving into this position, Mr. Speaker, to give those regulatory authorities the assurances that they absolutely need. So it may well happen that the web of restrictions increases, but so far it is only in China, and I think we have to recognise the incredible professionalism of the Chinese regulatory authorities in taking such a measured approach, which is just focused on the actual problem at hand. And I hope that our dairy farmers of New Zealand and their families and the communities that depend so much on their livelihoods do appreciate what the Chinese regulatory authorities have done. So, I mean, I think we have a lot to be grateful for, frankly, in the way that regulatory authorities have responded, and that may change. We accept that may change, and we should accept that as reasonable if it does change, and then work away, Mr. Speaker, at resolving those issues with solid, professionally delivered information and data. Obviously, this will leave then a series of other steps that we need to reflect on and then develop policy responses. We clearly will need a...
Time's expired.
Mr. Speaker.
Kevin Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.